Nights on the isolated New England farm were always eerie, but 9-year-old Oliver wasn't awakened by the howling storm outside. It was a strange, heavy commotion inside the house. Someone was ascending the wooden staircase, taking slow, deliberate steps that vibrated through the floorboards and straight into the boy's chest. The bedroom door didn't burst open. It was pushed inward with an agonizing, gentle, slow motion. A man wearing a thick rubber butcher's apron stepped into the room. He was dragging his father and his father's close friend by their ankles, their throats cut so deeply that dark blood still bubbled from the wounds. The killer hoisted them up, anchoring them into 2 wooden stools in the corner, turning them into grim sentinels tasked with watching the boy sleep. Oliver felt a wave of dizziness from sheer terror. Keeping his eyes open just a hairline crack, he watched the horror unfold. The man cupped his hands, gathering a pool of thick, coagulating blood from the floor, and began writing a rough, jagged sentence on the floral wallpaper. Finished, he wiped his stained hands on his apron and turned his gaze directly toward Oliver's bed. The boy shut his eyes tightly, forcing his breathing into a slow, rhythmic pattern. Survival depended on the lie that he was asleep. The man dropped to his knees and wriggled his way under the bed frame. A foul, metallic stench of death and a heavy, wet wheezing immediately filled the space beneath Oliver. An hour of pure agony crawled by. Having adapted to the dark, Oliver cautiously opened his eyes and looked at the wall. The blood had oxidized into a dark, crusty black, but the silhouette of the letters was unmistakable. He read the words in his head, each letter ringing like a death knell. The wall screamed a terrifying truth. "I know you're awake." Then, a raspy, venomous whisper hissed from directly beneath his pillow. "I can see your eyes." This sprawling Victorian estate on the outskirts of London had always been defined by its oppressive silence. Thomas and his father had moved into the old house barely a week ago. At 2 in the morning, Thomas was jolted awake by a sharp creak from the hallway. The floorboards here were ancient. They were snitches that betrayed every single movement. The door glided open without a sound. Thomas squinted through the gloom. A tall, gaunt silhouette stood in the doorway, dragging his father and uncle by their collars. Their clothes were saturated with blood, and their lifeless eyes stared blankly into the void. The killer dragged them toward Thomas's study desk, propping them up into 2 wooden chairs. He meticulously arranged their hands on the desk, as if posing them for a family portrait. Thomas bit down on his blanket to stifle the scream tearing up his throat. Like a monster from a grim American thriller, this predator wanted to leave his signature. He thrust his fingers into the open wounds of the deceased, using the fresh, hot blood to paint large, crude letters across the wallpaper. The sickening, wet, scratching sound of skin dragging against the wall scraped against Thomas's raw nerves. When he was done, the killer walked directly toward the bed. The clearance was impossibly tight, but the executioner slid his body flat against the floor, melting into the shadows beneath Thomas as if he had no bones at all. Thomas froze, playing dead. He held his breath, listening to the wheezing, distorted respirations coming from mere inches below his back. Time seemed to lose all meaning. After what felt like an eternity, the clouds parted outside, allowing the pale moonlight to illuminate the wall. Thomas stared at the gory message. The blood had begun to run down, distorting the shapes of the words. He pieced the syllables together in his mind. When the sentence formed, The ice in his veins solidified. "I know you're awake." At that very moment, the sharp, metallic click of a blade kissing the floorboards echoed from beneath his bed. There was a peculiar biting chill to autumn nights. Outside the window, the relentless drumming of rain masked the usual nighttime sounds. 11-year-old Liam lay beneath his heavy duvet, desperately trying to summon sleep. But a sound from the dark hallway shattered his attempts. Heavy, dragging footsteps. This was not his father's familiar rhythmic stride. It sounded as though someone was hauling a massive, dead weight across the floorboards. Liam slit his eyes open just a fraction, tracking the sliver of light beneath his bedroom door. Suddenly, the door groaned open. A towering figure, well over 6 feet tall and wearing a crude black mask, stepped into the room. Liam's blood ran cold. In his massive hands, the intruder was carrying the limp, mutilated bodies of Liam's parents. With agonizing deliberation, the killer propped them up side by side in the old armchair in the corner, dressing them like macabre dolls. Their heads lolled unnaturally onto their shoulders. In the suffocating silence, the only sound was the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of blood pooling onto the hardwood floor. Liam forgot how to breathe. The killer reached out, dipping his bare fingers into the thick, warm blood pooling from the father's wounds. He turned to the white wall and began to scrawl words in jagged, dripping strokes. Even in the darkness, the faint luminescence of the street lamp outside made the crimson letters gleam with a sickening wetness. His task finished, the intruder turned slowly toward Liam's bed. The boy instantly closed his eyes, forcing his body into the lax mimicry of deep sleep. The edge of the mattress dipped under a sudden, heavy pressure. Then the man slid himself underneath the frame, vanishing into the pitch-black void beneath the boy. Liam's heart hammered so violently against his ribs he was certain the creature below could hear it. The heavy, ragged breathing emanating from under the floorboards turned every passing second into a waking nightmare. An hour bled by. Liam's eyes finally adjusted to the deep gloom of the room. He focused on the wall, straining to decipher the messy crimson text. As the letters finally connected in his mind, a gasp caught in his throat. The message read, "I know you're awake." In that exact microsecond, Liam felt the mattress shift beneath him, and a cold, wet hand slid over the edge of the bed. The grandfather clock in the hallway of the old Boston mansion struck 3. Its heavy, rhythmic ticks usually brought comfort to 10-year-old Ethan, but tonight they were drowned out by a different sound. A wet, sliding noise was moving up the stairs, accompanied by the distinct smell of rusted iron. Ethan kept his eyes open just a fraction. Through the darkness, a shadow spilled into his bedroom. It was a tall, unnaturally thin man wearing a heavy leather coat that glistened with fresh moisture. In his hands, he dragged the lifeless bodies of Ethan's father and elder brother. Their pale faces were frozen in masks of pure terror. The killer dragged them toward the window, propping them against the glass side by side, making them look like two onlookers staring out into the midnight rain. Ethan's chest tightened. He felt a scream rising, but he choked it down. The intruder dipped his hand into the dark fluid pooling around the brother's neck. With a slow, scraping motion, his fingers traced sharp, jagged characters onto the white wooden shutters of the window. Without a sound, the man then dropped to his knees. Like a serpent slithering into a den, he slid beneath Ethan's low-profile bed. the leather of his coat sticking slightly to the floorboards as he disappeared into the dark. Ethan immediately locked his muscles, freezing in place. He feigned the slow, heavy breathing of a child in a deep slumber. Beneath him, the floorboards groaned under the killer's shifting weight. The heavy metallic smell of death wafted up through the mattress, suffocating and thick. An hour crawled by. Every second felt like a drop of boiling water on Ethan's nerves. As the storm outside cleared, the pale moonlight hit the window shutters. Ethan's eyes, now completely adjusted to the dark, focused on the glistening, wet words written in his family's blood. He pieced the chaotic lines together. When the sentence finally registered in his mind, his heart skipped a beat. "I know you're awake." In that exact moment, the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock outside stopped, and a cold, bony finger began to tap rhythmically against the wooden slats directly beneath Ethan's spine. Tap, tap, tap.